If you have a policy, remind the employee of the policy. If you don't have a policy, then just talk about your expectations generally. Thank first, listen second, advise third. That listen part sometimes gets lost.
Have you ever wondered about the real impact of juggling more than one job in today's fast changing workplace? According to SHRM's 2026 Trends and Predictions report, polyworking is on the rise, not just to make ends meet, but rather to create that flexibility, fulfillment, and sometimes pure survival. But what happens when your side hustle bumps up against company policy or even your well being? Today, we're joined by Jonathan Siegel, an attorney at Duane Morris, to unpack both the legal and the personal side of polyworking, weighing the risks and rewards for employees and what HR professionals need to know about this growing trend. Welcome to All Things Work, Jonathan.
My pleasure to be with you, Ann. Thank you for including me today and the audience for being here as well.
Yeah, it's really great. We're really looking forward to diving into this conversation. There's a lot to get through. So let's go right into it and explore some of those key legal considerations employees really should be aware of when it comes to polyworking. So for those who are thinking of taking that on that second job, what should they consider to avoid getting into that legal trouble just at surface level with their current employer?
Sure. So, Ann, so I don't get into legal trouble. You get a lawyer, you get a disclaimer. This isn't legal advice. This is specific factual situations.
Yes.
Giving some general suggestions
Mhm.
only. I think the most important issue if you're an employee is transparency. Where I've seen things go wrong from the employee side and the employer side is when the employee is hiding the ball, not talking about another job, perhaps not being honest about the other job. And we'll talk about the flip side where the employer doesn't set forth its expectations or restrictions. But to me, the most important issue is be open about it. And if you think your employer may have a problem with it, wouldn't you rather know before than later when you may lose the job and your reputation that can go with it? So honesty and transparency.
And on that transparency, it kind of answers the next question I had is, for those who maybe already have the two jobs, they're already working it. Maybe they started the new job they got hired on, but they had this side hustle. Should they really disclose this information to their employer? Should they disclose it up front? And if so, what's the most appropriate way to approach this conversation?
It's a great question. First of all, if you have a side hustle, and it can be employment, it can be as an independent contractor, being an entrepreneur on the side. The first question you really need to ask yourself, is it competitive? If it's competitive, you got a potential problem, you should disclose. If it's not competitive in terms of the work you're doing, is it competing for your time? If you can't give your all, then you probably should have a conversation about what the expectations of your employer are and can you meet them? If there's not, then you should check your policies. Check yourself first, think of your business second, and then look at your policies. It's not meant to be not necessarily in that particular order, but does the employer have a policy? If the employer says you need to disclose, then comply with this letter as well as the spirit of the policy. I saw a policy that recently saw a policy that said, if you have outside employment, you need to disclose. Well, as I know, a lot of the outside work, some of the side hustles, they're not employment opportunities. They're entrepreneurial, independent contractors. Technically, you might not have to disclose, but under the policy, but I think you would score points with your employer if you did. And I think when you go in, I wouldn't go in and say, I want to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong. And I wouldn't go in and say, I know I'm doing everything right. Look, I didn't see anything in our policies that prohibit this, but I want to make sure you're aware of this so you hear it from me. If there's nothing in the policies that prohibit it, if you don't have an employment agreement that prohibits it, you probably don't have to disclose. But if you think your employer would want to know, or you might feel better telling them, one of the things that I find in is that sometimes People are afraid if their employer finds out, how will the employer respond? My question is, would you rather them find out from you or from that third party? I would rather people hear it from me and say, look, I value working for company ABC. This is my primary source of income. This is where you're my employer. I just want you to know I do have consulting on the side. I want you to know I bartend on the side. I just want to let you know what I'm doing. So if you have any questions, we can work them through together and treat it as a collaborative. HR folks get this interactive dialogue where the goal is to be able to keep that side hustle so long as it doesn't conflict with the nature of the job and your job responsibilities, but in a way where your employer feels comfortable too.
And so something that didn't really pop into my head right away when we were approaching this subject, legal considerations aside, polyworking can significantly affect an employee's taxes and benefits. Now, this is something I thought was really interesting. What would you advise employees to be aware of regarding the tax implications of holding multiple jobs?
So this is great because I get to give the answer I would give if I were giving legal advice, which is, and I'm not, you need to talk with a tax lawyer.
Disclaimer.
Or you
here.
need to talk with your accountant.
Exactly.
I'm an employment lawyer. Take tax advice from me and no good will come from it. I rely on my tax lawyer. I rely on my accountant. If you don't have an accountant or a sub-consultant you can speak with, then at least for this discrete matter, engage someone. Because having multiple gigs, a primary and other jobs can have tax consequences. And it's going to vary on the nature of those relationships, how much you're earning, what state you're in. There's not going to be a one size fits all, but get professional advice on that discrete issue.
Hey everyone, for sure members tuning into this episode today, we've got a special treat, a crystal ball for you and your team in the form of SHRM's 2026 Trends and Priorities Report, featuring 7 game-changing HR trends set to redefine the world of work in the year ahead. From the real impact of AI and personalized coaching to even navigating the new era of side hustles and polyworking, to the reinvention of recruitment, upskilling, and workforce structure, this new report is packed with expert insights and bold predictions, all to help you lead your organization into 2026 with confidence for improved profitability, talent retention, and other measurable outcomes. If you're watching on YouTube, simply click the link above for instant access or find the link in this episode's description. Now, let's get back to the conversation. All right, so let's be honest. One job in itself can be very stressful. If you're a full-time attorney or you got a high-pressure environment, add another job on top of that, your personal well-being, it's at risk. I mean, I definitely feel stressed on a daily basis. I can imagine working 2 jobs, but some people feel the need to do that because they need extra income. They just need it, especially in today's economy.
Yeah.
So what are some of those early warning signs of burnout employees should really watch out for when they're managing multiple jobs?
Sure. And if you don't mind, can I throw one thing in first? For some people that have one job, they may say, I feel like I'm polyworking. I got 3 jobs I'm trying to handle. It really depends in part on how many hours you work for your primary job and how much emotional commitment there is, because it's not just what you're doing, it's what you bring to the table. I think when you have this second gig or this side hustle, does it energize you or does it enervate or weaken you? And the only person who's going to know is you yourself. I have my own tells for myself, and this is where we know with EQ, self-awareness is so important. If you're getting angry at both, if you're getting angry at everyone around you, you're overextended. If you begin to resent your primary employer because you can't get to your side hustle, once you're feeling that resentment, that's really a warning sign that trouble lies ahead. or you
Hmm.
resent your side hustle because it's interfering with your primary, the feelings will often come before the conflict. Pay attention to the feelings. If you feel like everything's too much, then you have to check your feelings. But if you get to the point where you say, I don't know if I can handle this anymore, step back and ask yourself, what can give? It can't be I'm going to pull back on my primary job. You have to be prepared to pull back on the side hustle. Because if you give less to your primary job because the side hustle is taking too much out of you, then I think there's a problem.
Self-awareness is big, and our president and CEO, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., actually went on the Today Show earlier this year on this exact topic. And I remember sitting down with him, and he even said, the biggest thing he wanted to address in this discussion was the well-being of employees, because when you're juggling all this and you got the stresses of, I just need more income to support my life, or in the situation that you're in, so sometimes the side hustle isn't just a passion, it's a necessity for some people. He really emphasized the need to be aware of those early burnout signs, because it can, at the end of the day, impact your primary job. And that's not something you want to lose at the end of the day.
No, no. And I saw that piece on, I forgot it was the Today Show. I saw when it aired. And I was so happy to see the human approach as opposed to the legal matters too.
Let's say you were the people manager in this situation. You're having that discussion with the employee who's trying to approach you about handling multiple jobs. What advice would you give your employee on how to approach the situation? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's dive a little deeper from the people manager side.
Well, first of all, as a people manager, you may think you're one of the people, but don't forget you're a manager. And I think the first thing you want to do is remember it takes transparency is good. So is some courage. It takes some courage to walk into your boss, to the people manager, and say this. If you're the people manager, thank the person. Really appreciate your letting me know. You don't need to say that's respectful, but it should feel like respect if you're the people manager. I think it would feel like respect. Thank the person first thing. And then, don't judge. Don't run to conclusions. Say, I really appreciate your letting me know. Love to learn more. Can you tell me a little more about what you're doing, where you do it, how many hours you think it takes? Um, if you have a policy, remind the employee of the policy. If you don't have a policy, then just talk about your expectations generally. Thank first, listen second, advise third. That listen part sometimes gets lost.
I like that you brought up asking the questions following those 3 steps to start off the conversation. It's really empathetic. And I like that approach. One of the smartest year end moves, investing in yourself. Use those remaining dollars to join your HR community at SHRM 26. Learn more at shrm.org/SHRM 26.
You said it's empathetic. As we know, empathy is so important. See it through the employee's window. There may be multiple reasons the employee is doing this. They may need the money. They may need this for satisfaction.
Let's move on to some rapid questions here. We're going to call it our next segment, On the Record Rapid Fire. We're going to get your hot take on a few situations and scenarios. So we'll run through this. Okay, so this is one I really am so curious about. What's the wildest polyworking scenario you've either encountered in your practice or even heard about, without naming, obviously, a specific person or company?
Oh, this one comes to mind right away. The employee, I'll just keep it very general, that was working in two professional services firms at the same time while being remote. And, within reason, remote work, sometimes it can be full time, but neither company was checking in on him. And for 9 months was earning income from both companies. And I remember when I got the phone call, someone says, we want to fire him. And I asked the question, who's the him? The employer or his manager? It could have been a her. This is more likely to go awry if there's no supervision, there's no discussion. Got to be really clear that when you're doing remote work, and this is where the conversations often can be, it doesn't mean, all right, I'll start at 9 with my primary job, and then between 1 and 4, I'll do my side hustle. You want to be really clear on your expectations on working hours. So this person made a lot of money for 9 months working for 2 jobs. I know he lost the job with my client. I'm not sure the ironic part of the story, what happened with the other employer, but it went a long time. And that, to me, lack of supervision.
And so I've worked with non-compete clauses before. I've had it in a couple of jobs. So would you say, is there ever a good reason to break a non-compete clause in this situation?
Well, when I think of non-compete, I think of 2 time frames: during their employment with us and afterward. I can't say for certainty in all 50 states, but even those states that say you can't compete after employment generally say you can prevent competition during employment. Now, what was that disclaimer I said at the beginning to employees? Got to say it again to employers. You got to look at the law of the states in which you operate. But I think it's very reasonable to say as an employer, and I do recommend that employers have a policy so there can be no question on this. While you are employed by us, you're not to engage in competitive activity, and describe what that is. Because if you don't tell someone, little harder to find fault for what they do. If you're an employee and you want to break a non-compete, again, during employment, you're putting both jobs at risk. After employment, you want to talk, obviously you want to get your own lawyer on something like this, but SHRM has done such a wonderful job covering the evolution of non-competes and the changes that are going on with them. There is more hostility among the courts to non-competes. There's state prohibitions and restrictions. But generally speaking, those are after employment terminates. So don't Google or ask AI, is a non-compete lawful in X state? The answer you may get is no, but they're talking about after employment, not during employment.
Exactly.
And there's no issue with side hustles during employment.
So is there a particular industry where polyworking is especially risky or even problematic? You gave us an example of a situation that happened, but what type of industries could be worse?
An industry where trade secrets are critical to the organization's survival. If you get a robust trade secret agreement, you really need to ask yourself the question, in my side hustle, is there any possibility I could be using or disclosing confidential information? If the answer is I could be, you got to think twice. I think you have to look at, are trade secrets, confidential and or proprietary information critical to your organization? That may be a factor where a side hustle and the fear of disclosure would be an issue. Another area may be, do you have a public-facing role? And I think about that a lot because let's assume that you are the director of marketing for an organization and your side hustle is a little funky. How is that going to affect your brand? I had a case where someone worked for the drug and alcohol treatment center, and then someone's side hustle arguably was competitive in theory. How do you handle treatment? So you kind of have to ask yourself the question, but again, this is going to depend a lot on the employer and its values. I remember interviewing someone, if you don't mind, and they worked in their job and then they bartended at night. That was their side hustle. When I interviewed them, that was a real plus for me. I loved the fact that someone wasn't in an ivory tower, and they were doing good, hard work, applying for a white collar job and talking about it. Someone else might see that differently in the context of their employment.
Right.
I don't know if Duane Morris would be happy to see me, flinging hash or serving alcohol in a bar, even if it's non-competitive. So I think we kind of need to think a little bit about proprietary information being one issue, security clearance another issue. Are you public facing another issue where someone might question the impact? By the way, connects to the whole issue of off-duty conduct, what we do in social media, those same kinds of issues. Does what you do off-duty potentially impact with your employer's reputation and your involvement with them?
There's a whole web of things to it. Thank you so much. And thank you for these wonderful insights today. Now, there's so much more to this conversation going beyond just the employee experience from an HRM policy side to discuss. Each week, we ask All Things Work newsletter subscribers to submit questions for an upcoming episode. And we got so many great questions around polyworking that we even created a special legal Q&A bonus content exclusively for our SHRM members called Ask a Lawyer. I really love this. So just follow the link in our description or click the link above if you're watching this on YouTube to get insights on all your pressing questions on this topic as a continuation of this episode. For everyone else tuning in, thanks for joining us. And Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Ann, and thank the audience for being with us today. And thank you, SHRM, of course.
All right, we'll catch you next time.
If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast so you never miss a new episode. Also, did you know All Things Work is more than a podcast? That's right, we're also a weekly newsletter that includes in-depth articles and the latest research from SHRM to keep you in the know. Just head to shrm.org/allthingswork to sign up. Plus, follow SHRM on social media to view the latest clips and join the conversation on game-changing topics that are redefining the world of work.
SHRM.